Hello, I'm Andrew Taylor, Maths Consultant for the Lancashire Professional Development Service. Today I'm going to be talking you through the Maths Planning Support Disc, which is our main resource that has been used in primary schools across Lancashire and outside of Lancashire for the past 4 or 5 years. When you open the disc, you will come to this window with a number of folders and a number of documents at the bottom, and the way to get into the resource is to go through the front page. So this front document, a PDF document, once we click on that, it will bring up this home page of the resource, allowing us to choose whatever year group we want to work from, and we've also got other information, so copyright information and additional resources. The additional resources are particularly useful. They take you to a page on our website where you can find extra materials, answers to all the questions within the planning disc, so it really is an invaluable thing that a lot of teachers do miss out on. So what I'll do is I'll go into one of the year groups and explain how the resource is structured and how it can be best used. So this is the Year 1 overview, and what it tells us is the areas of the curriculum that will be covered in each week of the year. So as you can see, each half term is 6 weeks long, and there are 6 half terms across the year. There are weeks that link very directly with each other, like these two first ones here, both number and place value, where incredibly important building blocks for learning mathematics are covered very early on in the year. Then we've got other weeks that follow, and they often apply or use some of the knowledge from previous weeks. So here, for example, this measurement unit on length and mass or weight is directly applying some of the knowledge of ordering and comparing numbers and understanding numbers from the previous 2 weeks. These 2 units on addition and subtraction, once again, will be using some of the knowledge from the number and place value units, as well as using the context of measurement for some of the word problems. So the units have been deliberately structured and ordered in this way. So there are links between these adjacent units where children are applying and linking different aspects of the maths curriculum together. At the end of each term, we have a week dedicated to assessment and reviewing the learning to date. So here, end of autumn 2, end of spring 2, and the end of summer 2. And to assist schools and teachers in assessing the children's understanding up to that point, there are end of term tests that we have developed which cover just the areas the children have learnt and the expectations of what would be expected by the end of that term. More on those later. So if we are planning using this, we've got this half term that we might be using, so let's click on there, and what this brings up is the medium term plan in a little bit more detail. So the medium term plan is comprised of these starter suggestions at the top, so those are age related tasks that we might want children to regularly practice at the beginning of a lesson. So the first 10 minutes or so of a lesson, we might want children in Year 1 to practice reading and writing numbers to 50 in figures, counting on and back in ones from any 1 or 2 digit number. So these are the starter suggestions for number, and over here we've got starter suggestions for the other areas of the curriculum, for measurement, geometry and statistics. So those can be used flexibly and should be chosen according to what the children need. The rest of the document, this medium term plan, is a detailed look at each week. So here we have the week title, week 1, number and place value, and the main learning here are the objectives taken from the national curriculum. Now these are end of year objectives, and these will be seen when we get into the weekly plans. The idea of this week 1, is explained in the rationale here. So the rationale is very important to get the big idea of what you want children to achieve within this single week. The subsequent week might refer to the previous week by saying, well, we'll be using their understanding of the numbers from previous week to identify one more and less than a given number using different representations. So it's clear what the progression from week 1 into week 2 will be. As you can see, we've got that level of detail for every week in each half term. So we've got the title of the unit, the main learning that will be touched on and covered within the week, and the rationale, the big idea that you want children to achieve. So if we go into one of these weeks, let's go into week 2. So here we've got the ingredients for the week, and as you can see, they are structured in this order, and every unit has exactly the same structure. So we've got main learning, and these objectives over here are exactly taken from the previous page, the medium term plan. These are end of year expectations, so children would not be expected to achieve all of these in the autumn term. So another resource that I will talk through later in the video is learning and progression steps that will go into detail about how these are broken down into small manageable steps, giving teachers and children a realistic expectation of what they should achieve at what point in the year, leading towards achieving that by the end of the year. Back to this though, within the main learning we've also got these blue hyperlinks like success criteria here. So tapping on there will give us the main learning again, and in some cases we've got success criteria. So here we've got process success criteria, instructions, steps in learning to help children be successful with that objective. So you can see counting in multiples of 2 if we're using a number track or a number line or 100 square. Starting at 0, indicate it, put a circle on it, put a counter on it, put your finger on it. Don't say the next number because we're counting in 2s. Say the number after this, indicate that. Carry on, missing a number, then saying the number after, and as you can see, we're generating that pattern of counting in 2s. You can see a similar set of instructions for counting in multiples of 5, counting in multiples of 10, and the other learning objectives, some suggested steps to success to support the modelling, the teaching, and a way of helping children to identify themselves whether they've been successful with their learning. So the success criteria complements another area of the planning disc, which is this modelling section here. So the modelling section talks about how to teach some of these key concepts within here. So anything within a purple border, any image within a purple border is linked to another resource. So it's hyperlinked. So we click on that and we've opened this resource, which is a 3-part number line. So this 3-part number line, one of the resources that I've just clicked on, is a crucial tool for early understanding of number. So here we've got numbers represented in 3 ways. We've got the numbers represented as numerals, numbers represented using words, and most importantly of all, the amounts that these symbols and words represent. So here's 0, an empty space on purpose, 0, an absence of an amount. 1 tree, 2 cats, we may have 3 cars, 4 dolls, 5 apples, and so on. So these are random arrangements to represent numbers, and they give children an idea that numbers can be of anything. So stars, sweets, animals. But we also want children to start using structured equipment as well. So here we've got representations of base 10 equipment to help children see what's happening to each subsequent number. It's getting greater by 1, the number is growing. And then when we get to the number 10, that's something incredibly important about our number system. The base 10 number system is all about grouping in tens. When we have 10 ones, that is the equivalent of 1 10. And then when we've got numbers greater than that, like the number 11, its component parts are one group of 10 and a 1, which is what these digits represent here. One group of 10 and a group of 1. Those continue, and you can see the importance of another group of 10, 20, two groups of 10 and 0 ones. So we can't see any of the ones loose at the side. This resource does continue and goes right up to 120, just so that children can see the grouping of 10 tens to create 100, and also the repetition of our number system, those awkwardly named numbers like 11, 12, 13, 14 and so on. We only revisit those again once we go past 100, and we start talking about 110, 111, 112. So this resource would be one that we would recommend you print off the first part of it and you use it in class on a regular basis, having it up on the wall and referring to it and doing activities around it. Back into the modelling section, we've got other resources. So this one is a PowerPoint resource that models the counting process and that grouping in tens that I talked about. And we've also got this, which isn't interactive, but it is just giving teachers an idea of how numbers should be represented with children. So in a practical way, in a concrete way, using base 10 equipment or other equipment that shows how many groups of 10 and how many ones there are within a number. The arrow cards that then support children in understanding the 3 and the 4 digits within the number. The 3 represents the 30, which is the 3 groups of 10, and the 4 are the 4 ones that go alongside. And of course, we also want children to relate this understanding with a picture of the number line. So here, where is 34? It would be greater than 30 because we've got 3 tens and some more, but it's less than 40 because we haven't got 4 tens. So here we're getting clues as to what the teacher could say and show to help children with their understanding of a number. Alongside the modelling, we've also got this section, the vocabulary that adults and children should learn and start to use confidently as the unit progresses and as the year progresses. Some of these words children will know already. They will know before starting year 1. So it's useful to just think of, well, which numbers, identify which of these words are crucial and new for this unit of work. So it might be words like digit or exchange, where children are having to exchange 10 ones for a 10, and vice versa, a 10 stick, like one of these here, for 10 ones. So those two sections are predominantly supporting the teaching, the modelling. Over here, we've got practice and consolidation ideas. So these blue words are hyperlinks to activities. So here we've got an activity idea of counting triangles, where children roll a dice, get a particular number of straws that the dice suggests, and after 5 rolls of the dice they have a pile of straws, and then they have to make as many individual triangles as they can. So another section that can support the modelling and also at times support the children's activities is this, the ICT Programs. So once again, they're images with a purple border, so like these resources over here, they're interactive and we'll open a new resource. The majority of them will link to a page on our website where the ICT programs are hosted, but you'll just be prompted to save the programs and they'll be able to run on your device. So let's have a look at this one, ICT. First ICT program, there we go. So place value in ordering. So as you can see from the web address, it's hosted on our website, and then we'll start the application. Select a number range that's appropriate for autumn term, year 1, and here we've got a number of spaces where we will see a number represented in different ways. So what number shall we have a look at? 12. So here we can see the position of 12 relative to the other numbers, 10 to 19. So we can see that it's closer to 10, further away from 19 and so on. 11 and 13 are either side of it. And then below we can see what it's made up of. So similar to the image I talked through earlier, 12 is one group of 10 and 2 ones. We've got it represented using arrow cards over here. An arrow card worth 2 and a 10 will combine to create the number 12 by lining up the arrowed ends. And then here we've got the number represented as a calculation. 12 equals, or is the same as, a group of 10 plus a group of 2. So a very useful resource that we can use to explain what numbers are, how they're written, why they're written a certain way, and also then start looking at how is that the same, how is it different. So what stayed the same between 12 and 13? That group of 10 is the same. The group of 10 here in the calculation, the 10 arrow card is the same. What's different? The number of ones. So those are all the red elements depending on the representation. So that's a very powerful tool for teachers to use to help with the modelling to the children. So back to the page, and as you can see, there are 3 suggested ICT programs for this unit of work. There are 6 practice and consolidation activities, and then scrolling further down, we've got this page. This page is predominantly devoted to children's application of the knowledge and skills that they've learnt. So we've got 3 sections here. We've got using and applying, which is a huge part of the curriculum. So the national curriculum in England now has 3 main aims, those aims being that children develop conceptual understanding and fluency, that they develop the ability to reason mathematically and the ability to solve a variety of problems. And it's here, in this section, the using and applying section, that the reasoning and the problem solving are exemplified. So we've got different tasks, some of which are hyperlinked to other resources, some of which are questions just in their own right for children to explore. Over here we've got a different opportunity for children to apply their knowledge and understanding, and that's in different contexts. So we've got ideas here of counting, how children can apply their knowledge of counting both in a statistics context when they're using dot graphs, or here with this resource where they are counting money. So counting in ones, if it's 1p coins that they choose to use as the tool, 2p coins, 5p coins, and so on. Down here we've got the assessment section, which basically are outcomes that you want children to be able to answer. Now, little word of caution, these are end of year expectations, so they directly relate to these objectives here. Now, when we go into the learning and progression steps later in the video, you will realise that some of these questions may need to be tweaked, slightly adjusted, to give you an idea of the expectation for that time of year, so the end of the autumn term or the end of the spring term, as opposed to the end of the year. But what we do have here is different questions showing how that learning can be assessed. So we can assess the learning by giving a list of numbers and then saying which numbers lie between 35 and 50. That's a way of getting children to order numbers. A different way is getting children to look at that picture of the number line and suggesting what numbers would be at each arrow. So earlier on in the year, this might be adjusted in the autumn term to have all the multiples of 10 labelled on there. But by the end of the year, children in year 1 ought to be able to identify what those numbers are without all the multiples of 10 labelled. So all of these sections within the planning disc, so across both pages, give teachers the ingredients to select from to be able to create a plan of 5 lessons for that weekly unit. Some of you may think there's an awful lot in there to cover in a week. Don't feel pressured that you have to do everything in there. Planning like this has not been written specifically for your children. Teachers need to adapt any type of planning to meet the needs of their children. So what we're providing here are ideas, suggestions for activities, for modelling, the language that ought to be used and practiced, ways in which the mathematics can be applied in different ways, either in different contexts or in using and applying reasoning and problem solving tasks, and then ways in which the learning can be assessed. So they are ideas and suggestions to be used and also to be adjusted to meet the needs of your children. So earlier in the video I mentioned about the learning and progression steps, which helped teachers to understand the expectations for a specific learning objective as children progress through the year. So here's the one for year one, and some information about how to use them and where they come from, but going straight into the content of the resource, we start with this, the key learning in maths for year one. So basically what this is the whole of the learning for mathematics in year one, all on one page. So a quick ready reference. Within here we've got all the objectives from the national curriculum, and those are identified with text in normal type, and we've also got a few objectives that are in italics, and those have been added in by the Lancashire Maths team, and that's because there are some gaps in the national curriculum and other things that we thought would complement the national curriculum learning. So for example, over here we've got, given a number, identify 10 more or 10 less as an additional objective that we've put in. So what we've got are those end of year expectations, and then further down the document is this. So these are the main learning and progression steps. So we've got these two bookends of the page, the end of early years expectations, so what you would expect children to have achieved on entry into year one, what they should already be confident with. So things like this, count reliably with numbers from 1 to 20, and then looking at the other end, this is the end of year one expectation. Count to and across 100, forwards and backwards, beginning with 0 or 1, or from any given number. That is a huge leap from the entry point with this objective. So what we've done is we've broken it down, that journey from that point to the end point, into small manageable steps that can be tweaked to create individual lesson objectives from. So first step here, count within 0 to 20, forwards and backwards from any number, understanding that 0 represents the value of an empty set and the number that's before 1 in the counting sequence. And then here, count to at least 50 from 1 or 0, forwards and backwards, and so on. So you can see the steps progress in small chunks leading towards children achieving the end of year expectation at the right time. The colour coding is related to what you would expect children to achieve at what point in the year. So the orange steps, which might include having to go over the previous year's expectation, the orange steps would be expected to be achieved within the autumn term, the green steps would be expected in the spring term, and the yellow steps, and obviously the end of year expectations, to be achieved in the summer term, the end of the year. So as you can see, that's the breakdown of 4 of the learning objectives, and the subsequent pages break down the rest of the objectives. This one, an interesting one, so this is related to multiplication and division. As you can see, these are all spring term steps, so we don't do these objectives within the autumn term. We'll be teaching them just in spring term, and then by the end of the summer term we will achieve the end of year expectation. So here we've got the end of term tests that I want to talk to you about. So here, this example, year one, end of autumn term, we've got 2 test papers, an arithmetic paper and a reasoning paper. I'll show you that shortly. And what they assess are the expectations up to that point as defined by the learning and progression steps, the laps that I showed you earlier. So if you remember the orange steps, those are the ones that we have covered in the autumn term within the yearly overview, and also what the expectations, what children should have achieved throughout that autumn term and by the end of the autumn term. Now, we're talking about year one children, they're very young, they probably aren't used to tests in this format, so I wouldn't administer a test like this to children in silence, just all in one go. They just need to be considered as a bank of questions that show these expectations. Okay? They are structured in exactly the same way as the national testing system within the UK, so the statutory end of key stage test, or SATs, So the questions are presented and take the same format of those tests. So we've got a practice question here, which is exactly like they have in the National Assessment System. So as you can see, we've got assessment of different questions: 7 add 3, number 1's to 10, 9 subtract 8, 10 plus 6, and so on. So we've got a series of questions testing just the arithmetic. Sometimes they are straightforward in that the calculation is presented in a typical way. Other times they're represented in a different way, which gives teachers a clue as to what types of questions they should be asking just in the lessons and not leave these challenging questions just to the test. So here, 8 equals 5 plus what? So making sure children are taught to be successful with questions like that. I would also expect in year 1 that children are supported with the use of practical equipment when carrying out this test. So if they were given 8 cubes and they knew what to do with it to try and find out that answer. Okay, so the arithmetic paper is just a bank of calculation questions that are pitched at the right level for this time of the year. The reasoning paper is presented in a slightly different way. So, practice question, but this is spoken to the children. It's an oral question that is delivered by the teacher for the children to answer on the paper. And that follows with the next 5 questions. So here, the teacher would say, tick or identify the longer pencil. Some flowers here that suggest a calculation. The teacher would say here, there are 4 flowers and 2 flowers. How many flowers are there altogether? The mark scheme that goes alongside the arithmetic paper and the reasoning paper does have the questions in for these oral questions, so the teacher doesn't have to make up a question around the image. We've done that for you. After the oral questions, we've got these, once again, that reflect the questions and their presentation in the national tests. So again, it's saying use practical equipment for this. So here's a picture of a tree. How tall is it? Use base 10 cubes to measure its height. So we're assessing measurement there, which can't be assessed in the arithmetic paper. What number is represented here? So pictorial representation, assessing place value. How many counters shown on the tens frames altogether? So calculation, word problem. It's just something a bit bigger. Word problem, we're about fruit in a bowl, 13 pieces of fruit in a bowl, 7 children take a piece of fruit. How many pieces of fruit are left in the bowl? So we've got a range of questions that assess the whole curriculum, but only what is expected up to that point in time. So we've got end of autumn term tests, we've got end of spring term tests, and we've also got end of year, so end of summer term tests, which are assessing those end of year expectations. So the planning disc, the learning and progression steps, and also the end of term tests work in exactly the same way for every year group. So using the options there, or using the appropriate learning and progression steps and tests. So thank you very much for listening and watching. Hope you've appreciated what you've seen, and look forward to seeing you again sometime and maybe showing you some other videos of what we've got on offer.